Hi, welcome to our continuing look at the Bible. As I've said in other videos, if you've seen other videos, I try to read about 10 pages of the Bible every day. I've been doing this for 50 years. Started at Genesis, go through to the end of Revelation, start all over. I think 10 pages is a consistent amount. Some people, it's important to read the Bible, and I'm not criticizing any formula you have as to how you read the Bible. Some people read 5 chapters a day, and I used to do that from the beginning, but I found some days 5 chapters might be only 2 or 3 pages, and other days 5 chapters could be 15 pages. There's a big difference in the length of chapters. So I just sort of settled in and some time ago decided to do a certain number of pages every day, and today with my schedule 10 pages works out to be pretty good. One thing that I have done though, and it's the way not to read the Bible, is I sit down and read the Bible as if it's almost a chore. Well, this is what I'm supposed to do today, and I read my 10 pages. And sometimes when I'm reading, my mind's on other things, and sometimes when I'm reading, I do get, inspiration and knowledge from the Word. But then as soon as I finish, my mind goes back to other things, and I don't keep what I've learned. Sometimes when I'm reading, the Lord may impress upon me, send this verse, send this idea, share this with somebody. A friend of mine that might be going through something in their life, an encouraging word for them, or something I'll say, I felt an impression to share this with a friend. But after I finish my reading, again, I close the book and go on about my day and forget. So when I started this almost 2 months ago now, I started with Genesis, and I started making notes of impressions that I've got, thoughts that came to me. Sometimes the Lord speaks to me and I'll write that down, what the Lord is saying. And so I've been sharing these in these videos that I have. And now I'm in the middle of 2 Kings. And it's kind of interesting. Some of the same thoughts come up, the impressions the Lord has given me over and over. And we're going to start this lesson today with exactly one of those thoughts. The book of Kings talks about 2 kingdoms. The nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, the nation of Judah, the southern kingdom. The nation of Judah, the kings were descendants from David. The kings of Israel, there were many from many families, many tribes, held the throne in Israel. But there was a bad thing going on in both kingdoms, and that is the worship of idols. And when we start with 2 Kings chapter 15, it says this about the king Uzziah. In chapter 15, verse 3, it says, "He did right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. Only the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense in the high places." That is to pagan gods. They were worshiping idols and worshiping false gods. Again, I've shared this several times, but Psalm 121 is badly misquoted so often. The psalmist says, "I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence comes my help." Now, the tone of voice is important, because some people look at that. They'll stand in an area and there's beautiful mountains, and they'll say, "I will lift up mine eyes into the hills. From whence comes my help?" I see God's beauty and his creation, and I'm inspired by this. But that's not what the psalmist is saying. The psalmist is looking into the hills outside Jerusalem, and he sees these pagan altars. And he says, "I will cast my eyes up into the hills. From whence comes my help?" My help doesn't come from these idols. My help comes from the Lord. And it's a totally different meaning. Anyway, it says right here in 2 Kings 15, a good king, but the high places were not taken away. And it says that in Amaziah, this is his father. He was a good king. He did right. in chapter 14 and verse 4, he did right, but high places were not taken away. And then you switch over to the king of Israel. And we have Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, became king over Israel and Samaria for only 6 months. He did evil in the sight of the Lord as his father had done. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam. And every king of Israel, the northern kingdom, it says, it doesn't say this specifically about every king, but so often the Bible tells us this king did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam. When Jeroboam, who was the first king of the northern kingdom, first king of Israel, and he set up pagan altars, 2 different places, he said, now the people can go here to worship. They don't have to go down to Jerusalem. And he set up a false place for them to worship. And it got really bad. And we're going to look at this. Now, we're going to move over to 2 Kings chapter 16 now. And this is Ahaz. And King Ahaz, let's see, I'm going to make sure I get this right. In chapter 16 in verse 7, it says, Ahaz sent messengers to the king of Assyria and said, I am your servant and I am your son. Come up and deliver me from the hand of the king of Aram and from the hand of the king of Israel who are rising up against me. And that's bad, because God is to be our protector, not an earthly ally. And that's a real important principle for us to remember today. I heard somebody say one time, if you're in a spot, you're in a bad place, and you want to defend yourself, God will let you. But if you let God protect you, you let God defend you, then that's the way to do it. If you don't try to protect yourself, God himself will protect you. If you don't defend yourself, God will defend you. And so God needs to be our defender, and God needs to be our protector. King Ahaz he did a lot of bad things. He went into Damascus, and in verse 10 he went up to Damascus and he met the king of Assyria, and the king Ahaz sent to Urijah the priest the pattern of the altar and its model according to its workmanship. So he had the altar that was in Assyria, in Damascus. They had a pagan altar up there. He thought, well, that's a nice looking altar. So he copied it and moved down to Jerusalem. He didn't put it in the temple, but he set up a pagan altar that was exactly the same one, maybe up on the hills. And that's where he sacrificed to the Lord. Not a good thing to do at all. And finally, we know that God, his patience is long-suffering, but there is a limit. And in 2 Kings chapter 17, is a very sad chapter because it talks about Israel being taken captive. The king of Assyria came up and conquered Israel, captured Samaria. They went into exile. And I'm going to read this because I think it's important. In 2 Kings chapter 17 and on, I won't read all of it because it's a long passage, but it says, now this came about, why was the northern kingdom invaded and taken away? They lost their kingdom, they lost their freedom, they lost their land. Back then, when a conquering nation, they would move in and conquer the land in order to keep people's loyalty away, they would actually move them as refugees to another country that they've conquered and move the people from that country into their country. They moved everybody around so there'd be no loyalty to the land. And people would look and say, why did God allow God's people to be taken over? And here's what it says. This came about because the sons of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them from the land of Egypt. And they walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord had driven out, and the customs of the kings of Israel, which they had introduced. The sons of Israel did things secretly which were not right against the Lord their God. And they served idols. And the Lord warned Israel and Judah through all his prophets, turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments. However, they did not listen, but stiffened their neck like their fathers who did not believe the Lord their God. They rejected his statutes and his covenant. They forsook all the commandments of the Lord. So, verse 18, so the Lord was very angry with Israel and removed them from his sight. None was left now except the tribe of Judah. Very sad, very sobering. But here's another little bit. The only tribe left now is Judah. All the others have been taken away as a demonstration of God's desire for holiness, his demand, if you will, that we seek holiness. Now, he forgives when we fail. We can humble ourselves. We come to the Lord. I'm sorry I did this wrong. Forgive me. Give me a heart that does not get hard and rebel against you. I want to do things your way. But Israel was taken away. And in verse 19, this is sad and it's sobering. Judah did not keep the commands of the Lord their God, but walked in the customs which Israel had introduced. Very, very sad indeed. Very sad. And we can see now that God really wants us to serve him. He wants us to serve him as a nation. And although I struggle with this because I have a hard time understanding it, because especially as a Christian, it seems like my salvation depends on my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And it does. But the Lord speaks a lot. The Bible speaks a lot about nations. And because the nation turned against God. Elijah felt like he was all alone. And the Lord said, no. 7,000 people have not bowed their knees to Baal. You're not the only one. You're in a minority. Not many people are following me, but there are others. And here the nation of Israel has now been taken over, been captured, been invaded and defeated. And there were godly people, I'm sure, that were involved, and they suffered from this. But it's important for a nation to live in righteousness. And I think that's where I'm going to stop here, and we'll try to finish 2 Kings. Well, we've got a ways to go before we finish 2 Kings. But we'll finish here. Father, help us learn from the mistakes of others. Help us to seek you with our whole heart. Forgive us for ways that we have failed to walk with you so completely and so totally. Fill us with your Spirit. Give us a great love for you and a great desire to please you, so that our land can be a land of holiness and righteousness. Help us to walk with you and to know you and to be blessed by that knowledge of you. And help us to just be filled with the joy of knowing you. And let the joy of the Lord be our strength as we stand up against the powers and forces of evil that are in this world and are constantly attacking us, attacking your people, attacking the church, attacking the kingdom of heaven. Help us to stand strong and with you as we do battle spiritually against the darkness that's around us. Let us truly be your light and your love. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.